They were like, no way. We're not posting this. We are going to offend everyone. I will give you all this data about me, but in exchange, I expect something truly personalized and truly relevant that's delivered to me. Shit's going to hit the fan at some point. You've got to be ready to move and respond.
All right, we are live in Demo Stack Studios. I got my guest here, Randy Frisch, Chief Evangelist at Uberflip. We've been talking about evangelism, content, the different types of content evangelists do. But Randy, how are you doing today?
I'm excited to be here. I
Yeah,
mean, go figure. We have to come to Phoenix
to film
to
something.
record together, even though we're both Torontonians. But yeah,
Exactly. I mean,
good to
weather's
be
nice.
together.
Yeah, this is awesome. So, why don't we start off? And I know I hold this title too at Chili Piper, but it seems to mean a bunch of different things. So, how would you explain your role as chief evangelist at Uberflip?
Yeah, it's a word that has so many meanings, and even when I decided to transition from being a CMO, I had to go to Wikipedia just to say, like, what does this thing mean?
Yeah.
Partly because I had to explain it to my father. But you know, this eventually you get to the point of trying to explain it to your team and explain it to your community. And ultimately, when I landed on that word community, I think that's what this role is all about.
Mm,
It's about pulling together a community.
yeah. Now, when we're talking about community, I know what pops into mind, Slack communities. Some people would say LinkedIn is a community. How would you define community outside of like, is it just a bunch of individuals that you're trying to bring around this belief, or is there a forum for them to connect? How do you look at community?
It's a great question. And I think the important thing to understand is it's not one definition of what your community is.
Yeah.
Your company is made up of various communities.
Mm,
And I remember this is going back. I mean, Uberflip is over 10 years old. I remember the first time we went and we did a road show. We brought together a room of marketers. There was maybe 40 people in the room. And this marketer came up to me and they're like, it's so nice to get together with our community. Thanks for doing that. And that's honestly what she said to me.
mhm.
And I was like, that's kind of an interesting way to look at it is we're bringing together these people who normally wouldn't get together in their own backyard.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I realized we had created a community that year. I think we ended up going to like 12 cities. So I guess we created 12 different communities. But sometimes it's hard to start there. And that I think is a way for people to look at this role. It's not how do I go and run a 1,000 person plus event tomorrow?
Yeah.
You know, that takes huge budget,
Yeah.
huge resources, it's huge strain on your team. I've done it. But how do you start to bring together these different groups with a common understanding so that by the time they do come together,
Yeah.
now they have something in common that they can talk about. The other thing when you think about community is, you know, as a brand, is your community your customers or is it people who are not a customer
Mhm.
or your churned customers? I mean, these are all different groups. So we've done some aggressive things in the past. We even had our competitors speak at our conference one year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I did, but
Yeah.
the idea there is the more people you can bring together with different perspectives, you become, again, that chief evangelist, you become the one who's leading
Yeah.
this united community of people who believe in your vision and mission and everything your company is out to achieve.
So this is making a ton of sense in terms of how you're looking at the role, how you want to bring people in, unite them under maybe a common set of beliefs or interests or anything like that. When we're looking at maybe the day to day, and I know you do a lot of work in content, what are some of the things you're doing as a chief evangelist to foster this community?
Sure. So before I give you some examples, I think the role I'm in is no different than the role any marketer is in, any CMO is in, which is you're going to try and do certain things on a regular basis,
Yeah.
but you have to know and be ready to realize that you got to adapt in the moment.
Okay.
So you can't completely schedule out your day. You know, no marketer can do that. You know,
Yeah.
even if we had the best intention, shit's going to hit the fan at some point. You've got to be ready to move and respond. So that's the same in this role. I have nonetheless a number of, I'm going to kind of call them pillar pieces of content or activities that I try and do on a regular basis. And that's cadences that relate to what I post, when I post, down to the time of the day that I do it, speaking to some of the specific things that have worked really well. One, without a doubt, is podcasts. Sitting one on one and talking with someone is such a natural way to get them to open up and
Mhm.
talk about where their passions lie. So I've been doing my own
Yeah.
podcast called The Marketer's Journey. And I just released this morning the 137th episode. So we're going strong there. And in that sense, what that is an opportunity for is, coming back to this idea of community is an ability to connect with CMOs and understand and share their beliefs around, what's important to Uberflip, which is the importance of content and
Yeah.
a content experience. I do that once a week. I release that out. It has a number of benefits for the purpose of evangelism. Number one, some of the brands that I've spoken to of CMOs, companies like Box, as an example, but you've got this CMO now out there beating your drum beat in terms of what your vision and mission is, even if Box isn't a customer today,
Mhm.
right? And I think that has a lot of value. The other opportunity you have is you get to sit down with the CMO and you get to kind of in the background pitch your solution. Now, I'm not having a pitch, where I'm talking about Uberflip does this and Uberflip does that, but you start to build rapport and they start to understand the importance of what you're doing because they're naturally starting to talk about it and they're starting to believe in it and telling their team this is important. And their team sees them out talking on a podcast about the importance of your category, whatever that might
Yeah.
be. So there's a lot of benefits I think come from the podcast itself, not to mention now you've got thousands of listeners per week
Yeah.
tuning in with an affiliation to your brand that's done in the back.
Most of us tend to agree that the evangelist role focuses on almost evangelizing the problem that you're solving. You're not getting as deep into maybe the solution, the product. Podcast sounds like a great example of that, but talk to me about, yeah, I guess the different types of content you think an evangelist should do. I've heard you talk about some of them now, and again, maybe it depends, but I heard you talk about posting on LinkedIn. I've heard you talk about doing a podcast. All of that is part of maybe the journey and the message that you're trying to send out to them. But is there pieces of content or formats of content that you truly believe in that you think maybe every evangelist should do, or in terms of evangelizing the message to the market that companies should focus on?
Yeah, so we hit on the importance of
Yep.
podcasts, and I think we've hit on the importance of customer stories. I think
Yep.
finding the right format for that customer to tell the story. It's essentially a webinar always, but it doesn't mean you have to have a sign up for a webinar. I mean, sometimes I'll produce these as videos and
Mm.
I'll just throw them up on social and do them in a way that where they're really digestible, 2-minute little segments. Someone saying, this is my framework, this is how I use it. That's just kind of recapping some of the formats we talked about already. I mean, the last one that I'll hit on that's way chunkier and one that I never thought I would do was write a book. So I wrote a book, this was about 4 years ago, and honestly, it was never on my to-do list as a personal goal. I don't think I ever thought as a company we would want or need or value a book. The funny thing is the book originated as a piece of content in blog form, and it was uh, I guess you could call it a questionable blog topic. The headline was "Fuck Content Marketing," uh, and I wrote it on a plane ride to an event like this. Um, and I remember I sent it to our head of content at the time, and in response to the headline, they were like, "Fuck, no way! We're not posting this. We are going to offend everyone." And they hadn't even read the post. They were just like, "The headline is."
Yeah.
I wasn't allowed to post that for about 3 months.
Okay.
That post, it was just didn't sit well with too many people. But I found the right time to eventually push, and we put it out there, and it was received so well. And it led to a lot of other collateral. As time went on, people were like, "This would be a really interesting topic to go deeper on." And that ultimately became the book that I wrote. Now, the funny thing is, when I went out and we had to come up with the title of the book, I was very against "Fuck Content Marketing" being the title,
Mm.
and my team at that point was like, "No, no, no, you gotta do it." Like, and I was like, "You wouldn't let me publish this." But, you know, back to the format, I'm not suggesting everyone's gotta go be as profane as I am sometimes, but, um, I think a book allows you to put a well thought, view at the market,
Mhm.
and, the idea of that is that you can hand over the formula for success to your customers we did so in a way where we didn't talk about the technology at all. So
Mm,
our book, um, other than talking about some of the campaigns that some of our customers run, and not really mentioning Uberflip in that case, but mentioning the idea of content experience being something important, it was a way of us saying from a strategy perspective, we're hitting on something that you really need to prioritize. You know, Writing a book's not for everyone, but I do think it's a really valuable piece, and, maybe the best way to summarize that story is you get to that book by the most provocative, compelling pieces that you've put out that lead up to that.
that's a fantastic story. I think something that a lot of companies should think about. Maybe going down the path of what you all do at Uberflip. I feel like in ways I don't know if you have a framework to share with the audience of almost the content journey you ideally would want your buyer to take, right? So we've talked about maybe more top of funnel, getting them to buy into the belief systems, but is there a framework or an ideal journey that you want to take them down in terms of Uberflip, or is it more of a choose your own adventure?
Well, I think let's just distill down to what people actually want.
Mhm.
Uh, and as much as I'm trying to sell my solution, I'm a marketer and I'm being marketed to by great marketers because we're in MarTech. But we're signing up to all these things ultimately because we just want relevant content. That's my
Mm,
belief, right? Like we accept the email because we hope it's going to suggest something that's really relevant for us. We click on that ad because we believe now that they've personalized the ad and we're going to get something relevant on the other side. So I believe that we put up with a lot of stuff in our lives because we want relevant content,
mm,
right? And if you look at that in the consumer world, it's the same as just our willingness to give data over to Google or Netflix or Amazon. It's a barter, right? I will give you all this data about me, but in exchange, I expect something truly personalized and truly relevant that's delivered to me,
yeah,
right? So the question to me back to how you framed it is, well, what is it that people want at every stage of the journey? And to me, they just want what's relevant to them in that moment. Now, that's really hard to do,
yeah,
right? There's a whole bunch of stats that are out there that just scare the shit out of marketers, right? I think it's like 11 pieces of content before they're ready to buy. And there's,
yeah,
you look at, the Gartner CB data that's just like 11 buyers in the journey who are weighing in that challenger model.
yeah.
Our friend Jen Allen,
Yes, yes.
shares that data. Um, and then in your organization, you probably have like 5 different verticals that you're, going after. And then you've got, 4 different products. So you start to like mathematically, if you take all those numbers and you multiply them by each other, 11 times 11, I think I said times like 4 times 4. I did this math recently that it's like 2,500 permutations of personalized content at different stages that you would need, which is
Yeah,
just like impossible,
yeah, yeah,
right? So to me, it's how do we distill down to the moments that matter, right? In that journey and make sure that we are there to greet someone when it matters and move them along as seamlessly as possible. And I truly believe, I mean, I think that's what great companies are doing in MarTech. I think that's what Chili Piper's doing in terms of like kind of the pipes of communication, if you will. How do I get from this point to this point
yeah,
really seamlessly?
yeah.
A handoff is no different than how do I make sure the right content is there to move them from this point to that point,
Mhm,
right? And that was the same as back in the day when Marketo was really cool and sexy. No offense to Marketo today, but like
mhm.
it was about that email. It was about that drip cadence that got us from one stage to the next.
Yeah,
The buyers just gotten a lot more sophisticated. They're doing a lot more of this on their own. They're raising their hand to say, I'm ready to speak to sales. Chili Piper can help them. They're raising their hand to say, I need content here to get me through. That's where Uberflip's going to help.
yeah.
So I think the role of a marketer is to find the best technology to help progress that journey as quickly as possible.
Randy, this has been amazing. I'm learning so much. You've got my head spinning with different ideas of what we can do. Before we sign off, is there anything that I maybe haven't asked you, or something that you want to impart with the audience before we hop off here?
I think I'll leave with this, like, you gotta have a bold idea,
Yeah.
right? And we're here together at an event, and I woke up this morning and I went to the exhibition room for the first time, and my head was spinning. right? Like you said, but in a bad way, right? Like there was what, like at least 70 vendors in there,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And they all thought they had the sexiest booth and the coolest swag and all these things. And honestly, like, yeah, those pieces are important, but like, what are you actually trying to do? And
Mhm.
what is this belief that you have? Distill it down to a few words. The few words I told you just before is people just want relevant content.
Yeah,
Like that is a really strong belief that we have that we want to help achieve, and we want to help people realize that that's their responsibility to deliver. So I think people listening to this, it's like, look at your company, like distill it down to like, what is it that your buyer is trying to do that you can help with? And if you can do that, build a community around it. Find people who are passionate about that, who believe that it's silly to do it any other way.
yeah. Perfect ending. Amazing. Thank you so much for your time, Rand. This was
Awesome,
great.
man. That was fun.